What's up guys, and welcome back to Raising Reef. I'm Rob Shaw, and in today's video we're doing a little bit more tank maintenance because there's no such thing as a tank that runs itself. So taking care of your reef tank equipment is essential for long-term success with a reef tank. If you leave these pieces of equipment just to run and you don't maintain them at all, it's not going to be long before they start to clog up, fail on you and not work as they should. This is only going to lead to negative effects within your aquarium, unstable parameters, probably complete failure at some point if you don't maintain it, and this is not going to make the hobby enjoyable at all. It takes a little bit of effort to keep these tanks running in optimum condition, and this just means a schedule of taking certain pieces of equipment off every so often, taking them apart, giving them a good clean, and then reassembling them and giving yourself the knowledge that all of the equipment is running at its best and it will likely last you a lot longer. So I can't stress enough how important it is to maintain all of the equipment that keeps all of your reef tank running. If you allow these pieces of equipment to get clogged up with dirt and debris, or calcification builds up, eventually they're going to slow down, not work as efficiently as they should, or fail altogether. Now, Sod's Law dictates that this is always going to happen when it's least convenient, and therefore you'll just be leaving for work or you'll be going on holiday and then one of your pieces of equipment will stop working. Now, probably the most important piece of equipment on my system is the return pump. This connects my main display with the sump that sits underneath, and within the sump has all of the filtration equipment that we don't want on display in the main aquarium. My heaters, my skimmer, my refugium is connected through my sump, and my biopel reactor and any other piece of filtration equipment that you want to run down there is going to be disconnected from your main display if your return pump fails. So it's probably the most important piece of equipment to make sure is working properly, and this means taking it off every few months, stripping it down, making sure it's clean, and then reassembling it. And that's the job that I'm going to be doing today. So a couple of things are going to happen when I switch off the return line. The water line within the aquarium is going to drop slightly, and the water in the sump is going to rise. If you continue to leave equipment on which is sensitive to the water levels within the sump, such as a skimmer, there is a good chance that is going to overflow, so it's prudent to switch that off before you switch off the return pump. If your system has been set up properly, there will be ample room within the sump to take this excess water. If it hasn't, your floor is going to get wet, and this is just bad design. Most off-the-shelf sump systems will already have this all figured out for you, but if you're creating a sump system, a custom build that you're doing yourself, this is something you're going to have to take into account. So let's move down into the sump and start removing the return pump. So before I shut off the power to my return pump, I'm going to want to turn off my skimmer. The skimmer is sensitive to the water level within the sump, and if that rises, there's a good chance it could overflow. So all I need to do is pull the power cord out of that, and now we haven't got to worry about that starting to overflow when we switch off the return pump. The return pump has a controller on the side which I can just pull the pump out, and as you can probably hear, it's already started to siphon water out of the main display. You can see on there the water level within the sump is starting to rise, and if I can get in there, I'll be able to remove the return pump. I like to put a towel down just to catch any drips, because there's always a little bit of water trapped within the pump when you remove it, and we don't really want to get that all over the floor. So it just has a twist on the top that holds it in place, and once that's released, there is a little rubber gasket on this one, and it's important that you don't lose that. So I'm going to take that out so I know where that is when it comes to putting it back, and that is the return pump removed from the system. Out, and we can disconnect it from the controller. So with the pump over by the sink, we can pull the grate off the front, pull the base off the bottom, give this a little twist. Only twists about a quarter of a turn, if that, and then it should just pull out from the front. As you can see, I don't know if you can see in there, it'll focus on it. It's pretty gunky inside, and as you can see, there's a whole load of schmutz that's built up around there. I find the best thing to do is take your trusty old toothbrush, give it a run under the tap, and just give it a good old scrub. So clean all that crap off of there. What you might find is when you put this back together, for a few days it might be a little bit more noisy than it would have been beforehand, because a lot of that schmutz that builds up acts like a lubricant, and it actually stops it from rattling around and making too much noise. But obviously that's fine after a couple of days build up of slime or whatever gets in there, but over time all of that gunk is going to only slow down the pump's ability to do its job, and it's going to decrease its performance. Now these Jabeo pumps, or J-Cod pumps, I think they're pretty much the same thing, they just go under different names. They are cheap pumps. They're cheap Chinese made pumps. They're not expensive. You can buy them, probably the cheapest DC pump available on the market. I've been using them for probably the last 8 years now. I've never had a bad experience with one. Some people may say that they're crap, they're cheap, they're rubbish, they don't last, and they are not worth the money. That's not been my experience. I can only tell you what my experience of any particular product has been, and I've had many different pumps of this make over the years, and I use quite a lot of them on my tanks and my clients' tanks, and I've always found them to be as reliable as anything else. They're easily replaced. They're cheap enough that if you're buying one, it's probably a good idea to buy two and have one as a spare just in case one fails. Because I consider these pumps to be quite important for the running of the system, I will always have one on hand. If this one breaks, stops working for any reason, and is not repairable by just cleaning it out and freeing it up and putting it back on the system, then I have one on hand to just swap it out completely. I think the key to a successful reef tank is forward planning. Planning for the worst, although you might be hoping for the best. I think being prepared with this hobby is the key to long-term success. We're all going to experience a little bit of a problem at some stage, that's inevitable. You've got enough pieces of equipment running. I like to think of running a reef tank a little bit like spinning plates. Once you've got all the plates spinning, everything's running very well, and all you've got to do is just, keep an eye on it and keep those plates spinning. If you leave it for too long and you neglect it, eventually these plates are going to start to wobble, and if you don't see to it, they're going to start to fall off. Once one starts and you just try and start it, the next one's going to be dropping off, and you're playing catch up all of the time. So if you can be prepared and you can preempt any particular item and how it may possibly fail you in the future, then you can be prepared and you can have everything on hand you need to fix a problem before it becomes a problem, and you don't have to run off to the shops to try and buy something at the last minute. I always try to keep stuff on hand for any eventuality, really. I have a spare for pretty much every piece of equipment on my system. If I need it, I can just grab one and add it to the system. Even if it's not ideal or it's not the best for the job, it's something that I can do on the short term until I can sort out a more permanent fix for it. How vigorous you get with cleaning your pumps is entirely up to you. I mean, there is a little bit of residue of calcium carbonate or sort of crusty build-up within there. I could soak this in vinegar and that will help to remove any of those deposits that are stuck on the inside. Obviously you've got like little crusty creatures that have been growing on the outside. You could soak it in vinegar and remove all of those and make it look brand new. How much effort you want to go to, obviously a few crusty bits on the outside isn't going to affect its performance, but some people like to make it look as brand new as possible. I suppose it all depends on how much time and effort you're willing to invest in each piece of equipment. But the essentials need to be done as regularly as necessary. And this way you will have the best chance of long-term success with your tank. See a little bit of coralline algae growing on this cage here. Like I say, I could soak it in vinegar to remove all of that. Am I particularly bothered about that? Not really. The most important thing to me is that this is not inhibited in any way and can spin freely, and I don't need to concern myself with a few little crusty bits in the sump. Some people are a little bit OCD when it comes to their sumps, and they might want everything looking spick and span. I'm not that guy. I'm not that worried. A little bit of calcium build up on the outside of my pumps isn't the end of the world. Quite often you'll find that the backs of these pumps, where they're sealed in resin to stop any water from getting in, these little covers just pop off, and what you can find is sometimes water collects in there, and what you'll I just like to, if it's available, just pull it off and make sure I've drained the water out of it. Not that adding that little small amount of water to your tank is necessarily going to be an issue, but I just find that if you don't do that, invariably when you come to dry it and then you go to do it, you end up tipping it up one way and all the water runs out onto the floor, and it's just a bit of a mess. So yeah, we can just now put this all back together and we can fit it back to the system. The impeller just slots into place. It's held in with the magnetic, and then the top fits on like that. The grate on the front stop anything large from getting caught in the impeller, and the bottom slides back on. It has some little rubber feet that are built into the bottom of this thing, and it will just sit on the bottom of the tank and do its job. So that's pretty much it for cleaning cleaning the pump. It's not a big job and it doesn't take very long. If I hadn't been filming this probably would have took me 10 minutes to take this off, give it a good clean, put it all back together and put it on the system. 10 minutes isn't a long time to be spending maintenance on your tank. Doing this once every 3 months is 10 minutes every 3 months. What's that? 4 times a year? 40 minutes a year spent cleaning this pump. That's not a lot of time, and it gives me the confidence to know that this pump is working at its best. It may not last forever. Invariably I'm going to guarantee that it won't last forever, but it will last as long as it's going to last without neglect adding to the shortness of its life. So let's put it back on the system, and that's a little bit more maintenance done for this week. So it's just a case of popping it inside the return chamber. Now this can be a little bit fiddly with one hand. I'm going to take that little rubber gasket that fits on there. That just stops any water from leaking out. I like to poke that up inside the screw thread onto the actual piece that fits on. See, this can be fiddly doing this one hand. There's no way I could fit 2 hands in there. It just isn't really possible. So what I'm going to do is slide that back, get it to bite. There we go, and just tighten it home. That's as tight as I can get it. It seems to be on there reasonably well. So we just line up the pump cord, screw that on, that
that's to stop it from getting pulled out unnecessarily. And then I like to just tuck all this wire down the little gap down the side of my sump just to keep it out of the way. And just keeps everything a little bit more tidy. Now I have the power cord, and that just slots into the controller, and then once this goes in it will power back up and we'll be able to see the pump kick back in and start to refill the system. It does spew out a few, not that you can see very well, a bit blown out there. It does spew out quite a few bubbles as it goes, because the pump itself must have had a little bit of bubbles trapped in it, but the water level is going to start to drop, and that's another piece of equipment taken care of for another few months. So one more small piece of maintenance complete on the system that I don't have to worry about for at least the next 3 months. I know that the pump is clean and it should be working optimally. The longer you can make these pieces of equipment last, the less you have to replace them, the more money you have to buy more corals and fish to enjoy in your system. So I hope you enjoyed this video or found it informative. If you did, give it a like, share it with someone you think might be interested. Subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more videos from me in the future, and take it easy guys, and I'll see you in the next video.